week, we continued to work on our first Cypress test. We logged in and created a contact. This week, we'll learn to write assertions to validate that our contact has been added correctly. We'll also learn how to use random numbers to identify our data when using automation. So you may recall that last week, I asked you to see if you could finish adding in all of the fields in our new contact test. So where we left off last week was we had gone as far as the phone number, and I suggested that you try to see if you could add in the other fields for the new contact on your own. So I've done that by myself, and this is what it looks like. So if you haven't done that yet, you can copy what I've done, or you can try it on your own. But now let's try it out and see how it works. So remember, to run our tests, to open Cypress, we can type in npm run test. And it opens up Cypress. We choose end-to-end testing. Then we choose our browser. Okay, now let's run our test. Okay, and we can see that the test ran and that we've added in our new test user with all of those other details, the address and the country and so on. So now we'll learn how to write some assertions. So what do we want to assert on when we want to test that we've added a contact correctly? Well, we want to make sure that the contact is really there in the database. So what we're going to do is we're going to click on the contact we added, and then we're going to assert that all of the fields here on the contact details are present. So the first thing we'll do is we will be clicking on our test user to get to those contact details. So let's look at that in our code. What we're going to do is we're going to say cy.contains. That is a command that helps us find any text on the screen, and we will say test user, because that's the name of the user that we added. And then we will say click. Okay, let's save, and we will see our test run. Okay, and we can see that it worked because we went to contact details, but look, we didn't go to the right contact details. We went to the details for a different contact. We can tell that we went to a different contact because there's no street address or city or state here. So if we return to the contact list, we can probably see the problem here. The problem is that we've got a whole bunch of test users who are named test user. So what are we going to do to distinguish the test user that we've added? Well, we're going to use a random number. So let's take a look at that. At the beginning of our test, we're going to create a random number. We're going to say let random, that will be the name of our variable, math equal math.floor, math.random times 1,000. And I just need to move that parentheses. So this is what it should look like. You don't really need to know how this works. All you need to know is that the math random function is a function that creates a very small number between 0 and 1 randomly. And so if you want a number between 1 and 1,000, you just multiply it by 1,000 to get your random number. So now that we have our random number, let's add it to our first name of our user. So where we see here, get first name and then type test, we're going to add plus the random number. Okay, let's save that and let's run it. Okay, and as we know, we're still clicking on the wrong contact. So we'll just go back to the contact list and we'll see, look at that. we added a new test user with a random number, test 1 user. That's an interesting coincidence that it wound up being the number 1. So now when we go to click on the test user that we've added, we can look specifically for that test user. So this is how we will do that. Instead of saying CY contains test user, we're going to say CY contains test plus random plus user, and then there needs to be a space before the word user because there's a space after test and random in the actual test user that we added. Let's see if that will help us select the right user this time. And it did. This time we added a test 98 user and we went to the correct contact details. So now that we are on the correct contact, now let's start doing some validation. So let's identify, we'll use our identification tool to identify what this field is. And even hovering over it, we can see right here that it says first name. So that's the name of the field, and we can use that in our assertion. So we will write cy.get, and then the ID of first name. And then we will say should, and we'll say contain. And then we will put in the first name. Now, this is going to be a little tricky. We're going to have to use something that we didn't talk about when we learned about node. This is called a template literal. So we'll use a backtick, and then we'll type test, and then we'll put in our variable, and we will identify the variable by using a $sign and a curly brace. So what this does, these backticks, they're like using quote marks, but you can insert a variable inside the quote marks. So that's how we're going to assert that our first name is correct on our contact details page. So let's save and we'll run that. So our test user this time was 567. And we can see down at the bottom, we have our assertion which passed. We expected that the first name was going to contain test 567, and it did. Let's add one more assertion. This one will be easier because we don't need to use those template literals. We'll say get last name should contain user. And let's save and let's run that. And we can see there's our second assertion. We expected last name to contain user, and it did. So you can probably guess what your homework is for next week, and that is to see if you can assert on all of the other values that you added. And then you will be absolutely sure that the contact that you added was added correctly. Next week, we are going to learn how to delete a contact with an automated test to help clean up our data. Thanks for watching this video. If you found my training helpful, please like this video and share it with others. And be sure to subscribe so you don't miss a single lesson. If you're enjoying Monday Morning Automation and you'd like to learn even faster, be sure to check out my book, The Complete Software Tester, which is available in Kindle and paperback on Amazon.com.